Hi everyone, welcome to the Soul Revolution podcast. Today we've got an awesome, epic guest. I was chatting to Greg last week and his stories were absolutely blowing my mind. So really excited for this podcast and this conversation. He's lived with the Yawanawa Indigenous tribe in Brazil for 3 years. So with that, comes a wealth of experience and wisdom. So really looking forward to tapping into that. So yeah, welcome, Greg.
Thank you very much, Alex. Good to be here.
Nice one. So yeah, I thought just to start off with, it'd be good to know like how you ended up living with them. How did it get to that point? Your sort of life story building up to that.
So I first encountered the medicine of ayahuasca in 2016, at the end of 2016. I went through a period in April 2016 where mom passed away, and I was 23 years old. And I thought I had it all figured out in life. Had the fancy cars, had a good job, and
what was your line of work back then?
I was in finance back then. I worked in a bank in London, and I was working my way up to, be this big trader and earn lots of money. And it was a life event that completely shifted my perspective on what was important in life. So in April 2016, mom unfortunately passed after being sick for a while. And I was severely depressed. I was addicted to alcohol. I was drinking a lot, smoking a lot of marijuana, and I was seeing a therapist twice a week. And my therapist was he was the first person that kind of put it forward to me. He said, Greg, you've been here for 6 months now. We've been talking about the same thing, and I don't think I'm going to be able to help you. This talk therapy isn't going to be able to help you anymore. You really need to do something to shift your life. And so I asked him, what would you recommend? And he said, I really think you should go into the jungle and you should drink ayahuasca.
Oh well, so he'd obviously taken that journey himself.
Yeah, so he'd put some other clients through that journey that, he'd maybe got to the end of the road and didn't think that he could help them, and he advised the same thing. So yeah, that was the first introduction into the medicine. I went in down into Costa Rica and I drank medicine for the first time. And it definitely wasn't an easy journey, but it was something that the first time I drank medicine, I knew, somewhere deep down in my gut that it was really what was going to help me. And so I continued my path from there on and continued drinking medicine, visiting tribes, and in January of 2020, just before COVID hit, I encountered the Yawanawa tribe in Costa Rica, and I got to know them. Went back to the village for the first time, experienced their village, and then my journey sort of led from there on.
So when we were all in lockdown, you were living with the tribe and out of the way of it all.
Basically,
divine timing.
Divine timing, exactly.
Yeah, that's really brave, like especially with, like you said, the mental health problems you're having, to go out there on your own and to take that step. I bet that must have been pretty nerve-wracking.
It was very nerve-wracking, but for me, we always say this to people that come along now, that you really feel a calling into the medicine, and for me, going through that talk therapy, it was something that it wasn't really doing it for me. It was helping in a way, but it was keeping me kind of stuck. And the medicine is one of these things that, there's a lot of gut feeling towards it. If you really feel it in your gut, then it's something that really shifts you very quickly. Yeah. And so it was a shift that I really needed in my life, and it shifted me very quickly. It wasn't an easy shift, but it was a necessary shift in my life.
How would you explain that shift, like energetic or subconscious? I know it works with the subconscious.
It was a lot of cleaning of thought patterns of the body. My first journeys with the medicine weren't easy journeys. There was a lot of as they call them in the tribes, limpezas, like cleaning of thoughts and patterns that you're stuck in, and especially inside the body, this energetic cycle that your body gets in. So there was a lot of energetic cleaning, but also part of it was really the medicine delivering messages on how to move forward. That was for me the most important part. Yeah. I went through a lot of the cleaning and a lot of the body things, but for me the most important thing was the medicine actually communicating with me and how to move forward in life.
Okay, cool.
That was the main part.
How to integrate it.
Right.
What would you say the main sort of message was for you in that aspect?
To be in joy. That was the main aspect. I had went through, a long period of time of severe depression. and didn't want to be around family, didn't want to be around friends. I was a very social person before my mum passed, and then, you know, the trauma of my mum passing really, it took me into a kind of a dark place where I didn't want to be around anyone. I wanted to stay in my room all the time, didn't want to communicate with friends. And really the main message for me with the medicine was you only have one life.
Yeah.
Like if you're not in joy, then, you know, what are you doing?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, you hadn't told me this before, and condolences about your mother, but I actually lost my dad the year after in 2017,
Wow.
and that was the start of my sort of spiritual
Right.
path as well. So we've got pretty
I,
aligned on
yeah,
that.
a lined up story. And I think as well, like just to touch on that when you say that is, I think these events within people's lives, they're events that are part of your journey here on earth to really shift you.
Yeah.
You know, I think when events like that take place, it really changes your perspective on life and how valuable life really is.
100%. That was a big thing for me because I was like by my dad's side at the end when he had cancer.
Yeah.
And before that, like I obviously knew death was real, but it was something like this really real thing because I knew my dad so deeply, I loved him so deeply, and he was always strong, fit, and healthy. And to see him suddenly degrade like that, yeah, it put into context, like put into perspective life. And then I was like, right, I need to start living properly.
Yeah.
And also I kind of thought in a way I was enjoying life, and then it's kind of, am I? Like,
Yeah.
I'm getting wasted every weekend trying to escape the fact that I hate my 9 to 5, etc., etc.
Yeah, I went through the same journey. You know, I didn't exactly love my job, and I don't think I was doing it for the right reasons. And so I was the same as you. It came to the weekend, and you know, well, what are you going to do? You're going to go out and get wasted with your friends and forget about how horrible your week has been. And when I started to really go deep into medicine and into these cultures, that's the main message that really delivered through the medicine for me is these cultures are really enjoy all the time. They enjoy their life, and they might suffer in other ways from what we suffer here in the Western world, you know, in terms of food and water, and you know, their life isn't easy, but they take the moments throughout their life and they're always joyful in whatever they can do. And that was a really like an eye-opening experience for me to watch these people, you know, literally have nothing inside of a jungle and struggle to make ends meet every day, but still be in so much joy. And it was like, it was mind-blowing to me. I'm like, what is going on here? You know, it was a really powerful part of my journey to see that.
Wow. And yeah, I suppose coming from a finance background and myself in the corporate world, the focus is sort of like, you know, profits, money, materialism, whatever. And you go there, it's sort of the opposite because the focus is on the joy, which is to me, you know, a spiritual component to life.
100%.
So is that their sort of main focus, is the spiritual aspect of life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, us here in the Western world, unfortunately, we are very disconnected from spiritual awareness and nature, you know, especially around your big cities. We're in like concrete jungles, if you like. Everything's concrete, there's no nature around. They in the jungle, they are the opposite. You know, they're always around nature, they're always connected to nature. And for me, that balance of, you know, we live a Western life, but we also have to be connected to our spiritual being. We also have to be connected to nature and taking in all the wisdom and everything that comes with nature. I don't think we do that enough here in the Western world. We're so focused on the material aspect of life. I want a bigger house. I want a better car. My neighbor just bought a new Mercedes. Now I want a new BMW. You know, it's that aspect of we're constantly never happy with what we have. In the jungle, they're happy with whatever they get.
So they take time to be grateful for things on a regular basis.
Yes, they pray, you know, they enter these sacred medicines that they have inside of the jungle, and they give gratitude for everything they have in life, and they take that time every day to do that. And I think that's one of the main aspects that makes them happier than what we are.
Yeah, and I'm guessing like living in a close-knit community as well, because I've felt it personally here big time, especially since having children, because they say, you know, it takes a whole village to raise a child. And it kind of feels like a missing part of my life, because here obviously like, you live in your house and your families, and we do get support, like my mum's really helpful, but still everyone kind of lives very separate, whereas there you're together in this one container.
It was the first time I ever went into Yawanawa, which is the village where, you know, I've kind of been living. The first time I ever went into Yawanawa, it was the first time I ever understood the true word of community. It was the first time I ever viewed a true community. Like, we talk about community here in the Western world, but I'd never really seen that true community where everyone supports everyone. Here in the Western world, you get a little bit of community, you dip in, you dip out, you see friends, you go back to your life and you don't see them for weeks on end. In the village, everyone lives together. So you see the same people every day, and those people are your support system and you're their support system. And so when stuff starts to go wrong, that community really comes together.
So they're very like open, honest, and vulnerable with each other. Like if they're feeling down or whatever.
Yeah, very. It's a big part of their culture is the support system that they've built inside of that village. Everyone supports everyone.
So there's sort of like a system in place with that, or is it kind of like an unsaid thing and it just kind of happens?
It's a good question. There's a little bit of a system in place in terms of you have a leader of the village who's responsible for making sure everyone within the village is doing well, everyone has the food and the water and everything they require. But to be honest, inside of the jungle, it's a very natural thing for them. And like, they're brought up from a small child that way. They're brought up all surrounded by their brothers, their cousins, their uncles, their aunts. And so as you start to grow up as that child and you reach your teenage years and you reach your 20s and your 30s, you're so used to that community aspect that it just comes naturally to you. You walk around the village and everyone's saying hello, good morning to you, how are you doing? That's just part of their culture. It's not forced, it's just who they are.
Yeah, and actually nature, because I walk through my village every day, but it's quite a big village, so I don't know half the people. Sometimes you get a good morning here and there, but regularly it's more like, you try and look the other way and avoid eye contact, and it doesn't feel natural.
Yeah, and the village is very natural to them. You can walk through the village and, say you're going from one house to another and it's a 5-minute walk, it'll take you 20 minutes to get there because everyone talks to you. How are you? How's your morning? Where have you been? What have you been doing? And you're only going 200 yards and it takes you 20 minutes to get there because everyone's talking to you. This is part of their culture.
Beautiful, man, beautiful. And I want to talk a little bit about Avatar. You said some of that was inspired from the Yawanawa tribe, and you've spoken a bit about how connected they are with the land, and obviously on the film. And I know it's exaggerated for the film, like they literally connect to the plants, but I know you've mentioned that the trees that glow and the singing and some of the...
Yeah, sure. So I think within the Yawanawa culture, now that Avatar 2 has come out, it's not as big a secret. But for a while when Avatar 1 was out, it was quite a tightly kept secret within the Yawanawa that it was actually based on their culture. But yeah, like you say, the tree in Avatar, they call that tree within the jungle the Samauma. It's their biggest and most sacred tree. And during a ceremony, it doesn't glow as blue as it's presented in the film. Like you say, it's exaggerated for the film, but they do form that circle around the tree. And within the Yawanawa culture, they call it the Hodder de Marivi. It's a circle that they form around the tree, and that's their ceremonial connection to nature, is their most sacred tree. So a lot of the film is based on their culture, the blue of the Avatar. That came from the diets that they do within the forest, where they isolate themselves for months at a time and they cover themselves in a plant which is called Junipapo, or in the Yawanawa language it's called Nanu. And when you cover yourself in it, you go black. But over time, as the Nanu kind of seeps into the skin, you turn blue. And so you spend months at a time in a dieta and you're blue. And so when the people, whoever wrote the story and James Cameron directed it, as they seen this cultural sacrifice inside of a diet, they got their inspiration from the Yawanawa culture, on the blue and on the tree and the big circle that they form. And like you say in the film, it's exaggerated where they plug themselves in, but inside of the forest, when they drink their sacred medicines, that's kind of what they're doing. They're plugging themselves into nature. And they're getting that download from nature and the wisdom that comes with the trees and the plants. So yeah, Avatar was a very big inspiration from the Yawanawa culture.
Nice, and thanks for sharing. I know some of the film buffs, I find that interesting. And tell us a bit more about the dieta, because you've touched on it a bit there. You go out for months, sounds very, very intense. What's the kind of purpose behind it and the fourth purpose?
So inside of the Yawanawa culture, and every culture has their own ways of dieting. And you look around the world and you look into the Eastern cultures and they have their fasting. You know, they do water fasts or they do dry fasts. And within these tribal communities, they have a similar kind of sacrifice. And in a way, it's to break down the physical body. You're trying to break down your body so that your spiritual being will come through stronger and you'll get that connection into nature. The body isn't weighed down by salts, by sugars, you know, by food. And so during a dieta, depending on the time period that you go, the shortest period that they do is 1 month, but you can go all the way up to a year. And you're alone in the forest or with your group of dieters. So if I went into diet with you, we would be, you know, alone in the jungle in our hut. You're provided all of your sacred medicines, one of being ayahuasca, the other being hape, and you're provided a ball of banana as your food, a small kind of golf ball size of banana, and you're not allowed to drink water. So you're provided a special drink which they call kaisuma, and it's made with corn. And it is like a smoothie. And so you're getting enough water to survive, but your body becomes dehydrated. And what it starts to do is the same way as like in the, you know, in the Eastern and Asian cultures, they fast. The body starts to break down and it starts to basically get rid of anything bad inside of the body, because the body knows, its intelligence within the body knows that it doesn't go after good before it goes after bad. So it'll go after the bad stuff within the body. And as you start to break down the body during the first 15 days of the ball of banana, you get really weak and really skinny. And the whole diet for your whole period, whether it's a month, 2, 3, 6 months, there's no salt, there's no sugar, there's no contact with women, there's no sex, there's no self-pleasure. None of that takes place throughout the diet. And the whole point is that you're sacrificing to connect into Great Spirit, God, nature, whatever your term is for that, source, you know, divine source, whatever you call it, you're trying to connect more deeply into that spiritual aspect of yourself.
Yeah.
And so you're alone, you only see one person a day, that person delivers your food, delivers your kaisuma, and the rest of the period of time you're alone with your diet group. Or if you do it alone, you're alone.
Yeah.
But you're not always alone because you're connected.
What's the longest one you've done?
I did 2 months. I did 60 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
So I did 60 days with 2 brothers from Yawanawa village.
Was there any points where you're like, right, I've had enough?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I can imagine that.
The first ever diet I did, there was within the first 12 days, there was at least 2 days that I genuinely thought that I was going to die. Because it's very strong on the body, and your body really does start to break down very quickly because you're eating a very small amount of food. There's no water. You become super dehydrated. Your mouth is always very dry. So yeah, there was many periods where I was like, I'm not, I can't do this.
Yeah. So do you think that like this is something else we might be missing in our culture? Because we kind of have it, I feel like in a way, too easy here, and that can actually cause mental health problems because we're always trying to avoid any discomfort and make everything as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, I genuinely think that the reason these cultures don't have the same problems as we do is, one, the community aspect is that they're very supported by the community. But I think too, dietas and diets within their cultures is a very important aspect of the spirituality. And in a dieta, you're not able to run away from your problems. You're alone or you're with one other person or 2 other people, and you're there. Once you open a diet, you can't leave. So for people watching this video that aren't really knowledgeable about diets, the diet is opened by a page and you're prayed for a period of time. So if you're prayed for a month, you're not able to leave.
What's a page? A
page is kind of the top spiritual leader that you can become. So normally they're elders of the tribe that have been studying for 50, 60 years to reach that level. And they are kind of granted the rights by the medicine to pray for people, pray for healings for people that are sick, open dietas, closed dietas. And so once you're prayed for that period of time. And so there's no running away. You can't say I want out after 15 days. You're stuck for a month. And I think, like you say, part of that process is that you have to sit with your own demons in a way. You have to sit with your own processes, your own mental thought processes, your patterns that you're in. And I think in the Western culture, you know, we're so used to saying, okay, I have a headache, let's go and take a pill. You know, I have depression, I'm going to go to the doctor and they're going to give me an antidepressant. And it kind of just masks, it's like putting a plaster on a cut. The cut doesn't really heal properly. You put a plaster over it and it's gone. Whereas in their cultures, it's the opposite to that. You're pushed into, no, go and be alone, sit with yourself and heal. And I think that's why they don't have the same mental health issues as we do.
Yeah, and then on the social side, a big part of our culture is obviously drinking. So it's like the doctor's telling you to take a pill, your mates are saying have a beer, and it's like coming from both angles. I remember when I first had depression when I was about 21, and I was always like a happy kid. And then I started working in the corporate world, this one job, and there's a few other things going in my life, and I was just like suddenly out of nowhere really depressed.
Right.
I was eating my breakfast and I'd throw it up every morning.
Right.
Really difficult time. So I went to the doctor to talk to him about it, and it was just such a weird experience. And when I look back, it just feels even weirder, the whole process. She was just like really cold to me, like threw a leaflet about antidepressants. It was like, on your way, sort of thing. It's obviously a massively different experience as what you'd have living in this community.
Yeah, and in the jungle as well, you know, we don't really understand the various plants that they have, but within the jungle there's a plant for everything. I always tell the story of, they have a very specific snake in Brazil. It's similar to like what they have in Central America, which is called a fer-de-lance. It's a very, very poisonous cobra. In Brazil they have a similar snake, and there aren't even antivenoms that exist for that snake. If you get bitten in Brazil, you're pretty much dead within 15 minutes. Within the cultures, they have plants. And so if anyone's bitten by the snake, they're taken to the Paji's house. The Paji goes and gets the plants. He makes them a potion. They drink the drink and the poison disappears from the body. And so it's a very different approach. They're very plant-based, you know, they call in that strength of nature, that knowledge of nature. And obviously the people that know what they're doing and putting these things together. But yeah, like you say, I think, you know, within our culture, we're very used to the doctor giving you a pill and saying, here, go and take that. You know.
Yeah, I'm really glad, because I must have been in tune on some level at the time, because my intuition was like, don't do it. And I'm glad I didn't, but I know a lot of people do go that route. And, you know, everyone's got their own path.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, marijuana was a big, I know marijuana gets a lot of hate sometimes, but to be perfectly honest with you, it's not a medicine or a plant that I use anymore. But during my depression, it was probably what saved my life. You know, and I used it in the wrong way, and I understand that now from my journey that I used it completely wrong. And I became almost addicted. Well, I did become addicted, not almost. I was addicted to it. But I think if these plants are used correctly, any plant, then they're more beneficial than something that you're taking that's chemical.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the issue with marijuana now. It's like heavily sprayed, so isn't it? Like if you have organic stuff and you use it in like a ceremony, meditation, because it activates your third eye.
100%. Yeah. My very first teacher used to tell people that if you were going to smoke marijuana, and I know we're in England right now and this isn't advice to people, but that you should always grow their own. Because if you grow your own, you know what's in it, you know what you're feeding it, you know how you're talking to your plant,
you're giving it love,
and then when you take that plant into the body, it reacts differently. If you just buy it off someone in the street, you don't know where it's been, whose hands it's been in. You know, is it a negotiation for money? Has it got greed around it? You know, you don't know where it's come from.
Yeah, no, I noticed that even with just growing my own food. I thought it was spelling lockdown. I had more time in my hands.
Right.
I was growing veg, and the taste of it was just so much better, because it was like, and just the whole experience, take it from start to finish. There's something about that makes it more special.
And I think that's the same with these plants, you know, and inside of the jungle, they take care of their forest, and they know what they're getting. and they can walk through the forest with you and say, oh, I planted this 5 years ago and it does X, Y, and Z. They know and they understand their plants, and they're always connected into the forest. They're always connected into these plants, and they know exactly what they do, how much they should use them, when they shouldn't use them. There's a different experience in there.
Yeah, cool. And with the spiritual leader you mentioned, can you is that the main person you go to if you're struggling with things? Like, can you go and talk to them at any point?
Yes, you can. Unfortunately, within the jungle, they don't speak much English. In fact, there's basically no English. But if you were, coming into the village, you would normally have someone there that would kind of help you translate. And the spiritual leader or the page would be the person that would pray for you, bring you plants. If you're coming into a diet, for example, they'd sit you down. Why are you coming into diet? What are you trying to heal? And then they specifically put that into their prayer.
So they have like a medical aspect to their role as well.
They do, yeah, a medical plant aspect to, what plants should we give this person? What plants would be beneficial? What should we not give them? That sort of stuff. Should we give them baths? They do a lot of plant baths within the jungle. So you're not only drinking plants, but they're actually covering you in plants, and then you're not able to wash your body afterwards for a whole day. You're on a diet with no sugar, no sex, no salt. And the whole aspect is to allow the plants to absorb through the skin and start activating within the body. So it's not just, actually drinking or taking plants. They also do baths. They cover you in mud. They put you in a big hole in the earth, and they cover you in the mud from the earth. And you let the mud dry into your skin, and then you're not allowed to take a shower. So there's lots of aspects to these tribal communities that we don't really understand why they do things. But when you experience it and you see it, you start to get a little bit of knowledge. This is why they do that. We see it from afar and we think, why are they covering themselves in mud? That's really strange. But there's always a reason why they do it.
Yeah. And some of these things are slowly starting to creep into our culture. Like I watched a documentary on grounding, and that was one of the things they did. They had like a lot of inflammation or something, and this one guy would just have this kind of ditch in his garden and cover himself in soil for 10 minutes every day. And then next thing you know, inflammation in his arm is gone. So I think he's going to slowly start to creep into
and just it's a good point that you made on grounding. Within these villages, you see them all walking around barefoot all the time, and it's not something that they specifically do for that reason. But when you start to view, wow, everyone's walking around barefoot, you kind of start to understand when you see these documentaries on grounding, standing barefoot on the ground for 10 minutes, and then you go into these villages and they're running around all day with no shoes on. You start to really put the Western aspect and the scientific stuff that we've discovered, and you look back on these tribes and they've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Would you say they're more like vital and have more energy?
Yeah, they're they kind of go all day. Like you see some of the jewelry I'm wearing here, like the women make these and they'll be hand beading them all day, and it's different to our work sitting in an office building, but they're doing their work and they're always energetic to do that work. Sometimes we're drinking coffee after coffee to get the energy. Inside of the jungle, they use different plants to get that energy, and they're working all day every day.
Is hape the main one for energy?
Yeah, they use a lot of hape, or some people might know it as rape, depending on the culture, but in the Yawanawa they call it hape, and they use a lot of hape inside the culture.
Yeah. And how did that all start? Because there's like a bit of a story about how they found out about what plants to use.
I'll try and shorten the story for you because it's a very long story. But so at the start of the earth, the Yawanawa tribes say that death didn't exist, and so during this time they say that the forest spoke, the water spoke, the wind spoke, everything spoke. And like I say, the story goes that death didn't exist. And so there was one leader, and he wanted to build a big village for his whole community, but he didn't have the food to sustain his workers. And so he decided that he was going to go on a big hunt. And during the hunt, there was 3 young men that were disobedient, And the Yawanawa say that, you know, during when a leader or someone is trying to do something, there's always someone that's disobedient. And so these three young men, they said that they weren't going to go hunting with the leader. They wanted to stay in their village. And they started to experiment. And they started to say, let's see if death really does exist. Let's all basically call in the spirit of death and let's send it to our leader. And so during the hunt, the leader collapsed. And everyone was, you know, a bit fearful and a little bit like, what happened here? We've never seen this before. Someone's never collapsed. And so he woke up and he had no memory of what happened. And his wife told him the story, you know, you were hunting and you collapsed. And he said, okay, well, I'm really hungry, so I'd like to go back to the village and prepare food. So they went back to the village, and as the wife was preparing food, he collapsed again. But this time he didn't wake up. And so over the coming days, they stayed by the body, hoping that he would come back, and he never came back. And so after about 4 days, as you can probably imagine, the body started to smell, and they started to think, what do we do with the body? And so they said, can we take him to the forest? And they said, no, we can't do that because the animals will eat his body, and we don't want the body of our leader eaten. Well, we'll put him in the water. And they, no, we can't do that because the fish will eat him. And so the elder, the most oldest person within the tribe, he said, let's take him to what they call a shuhu. It's a circular building where they do ceremony, and we'll bury him in the center of the shuhu and put him inside the land. And so that's what they did. And then they left that village and they said, we want to go and create a new village. Our leader's gone. We don't want to be here anymore. So they left and they created a new area. When the second leader who'd taken over from this leader, he went into a very deep sleep one night, and the leader came to him in a dream. And he said, my friend, we were very close. We were really good buddies, and you've never visited my grave. A lot of time had passed, a year or 2 years. You've never visited me. I would like for you to visit me. And so when he woke up the next morning, he took his lancer and he told his wife that he was going to go and hunt. But his intention was to go back to the place that they had buried their leader. And so when he got there was various plants growing around the body and out of the body where they buried him. And he was a little bit freaked out and scared, and he said, I don't know what's happened here, but I'm just going to go home. So after he left the village, he started to enter, as the Yawanawa say, a force, a strength of something. He started to feel something going on within the body. When he got back to his home, he took his hammock and he went to another house. Didn't talk to his wife, didn't eat anything, didn't drink. Took his hammock and he went and he started to rest in his hammock. And he entered another really profound dream. And the leader came back to him and he said, I'm very happy that you visited me. And I know that you've seen all the plants growing out of my body. And so he started to pass information to the second leader within the dream. And he said, the plant growing out of my forehead is tobacco. And this is how you use it. You dry it, you grind it, and you mix it with this very specific tree, which they call sunu, and you blow it up the nose. And it's used for clarity, to clear your mind and to open your path. And he also told him all of the other medicines that were growing out of the body. There was ayahuasca growing out of his arms. There was the sacred potato growing out of his heart, which they call the muka, which is the most serious diet that the Yawanawa do. Is 1 year long, 12 months. There was peppers growing out of his mouth. And he said, these are called pimenta. And we use these to open up the voice, to sing our prayers. And so he started to pass all this information to the second leader. And that was when the Yawanawa discovered, these medicines, this hape, mix it with a very specific tree. They discovered ayahuasca, they discovered pimenta, the sacred potato, the muka. So that's how the story, it's a very short version of the story because the story is very long. I don't want to spend an hour telling you the story. So.
Well summarized. Nice. Very, very interesting story. And having experienced those plants, it's cool to hear the background of that. And what is the kind of relationship with death?
The relationship with death. So it's almost for them, death is like it's not a passing of someone, it's a transition for them. So death to them is kind of ceremonial in a way. Normally when someone dies within the community, they gather the whole community, and the whole community are around the body as the person passes, and they are really asking for the path, the door to be open for that person to pass on to the light, to source, wherever that, you know, soul, spiritual being is going. But for them, it's very ceremonial, and they don't see it as an end to anything. They just see it as a passing. You had your time on this earth, and now you've passed, and you'll go somewhere else.
So there's still a grieving, but it's maybe not as devastating, would you say?
Yeah, I don't think this is devastating for them. I think they understand that, you know, you're passing through an experience here on earth, and death isn't an end. And for them, when they enter their sacred medicines, they communicate with people, souls, spirits that have passed on. And so for them, they're always connected to that person, even though the person isn't here physically, they're always connected. That person's always present in their life.
Yeah.
So I don't think they have the same, they still have grief, of course, you know. I don't think you can escape that. If your friend or your family or your brother passes, there's always an aspect of grief.
Yeah.
That person's not physically here anymore. But for them, yeah, it's a passing, and that person's always still around. They're always still able to communicate.
Yeah, because they're drinking the medicine on a regular basis, aren't they? So they can communicate with them that way.
Yeah.
And other ways. And that might sound crazy to some people watching, but having
Right.
experience, I'm asking myself,
Yeah.
I know that, you know, that is very possible.
Yeah. And they're drinking, you know, in the village, they drink every week. So
Yeah.
it's for us, we go down the pub on a Saturday night and meet our friends, or we go to a party. For them, their communal gathering is to be in ceremony.
Yeah. And I'm guessing there's a lot of music.
A lot of music, a lot of praying. You know, part of entering into their culture is really learning what they sing about. We don't understand what they sing about because they sing in Yawanawa. It's not sang in Spanish, Portuguese. You know, it's a very ancient language that they sing in, and these songs have been passed down generation to generation.
Ancient prayers.
Ancient prayers, yeah, that have come through the culture, been passed from, you know, grandfather to father, father to son, son to son. And so as these prayers are passed down through generation, we don't understand what they're singing about. But it's very, that's what they're there for, to pray and to call in these spirits of the forest.
And do you mind if we touch a little bit on, I don't know if it's too much of a sensitive subject, but I know they came under attack like a few decades ago, and there's been a lot of trauma and tough times for the tribe, and well, Indigenous tribes all over the globe. It's gonna really,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the Yawanawa, unfortunately have a little bit of a sad story in terms of around the 1950s. Their culture was very, very close to being wiped out. I believe from what I've heard in the elders talking, they were down to 81 people. They went from a big tribe of thousands down to a very, very small amount of people. And it was when the rubber tappers went up the rivers, they started to take over the lands. They enslaved the Indigenous to carry, pull the rubber out of trees and carry these huge amounts of rubber.
Was this Brazilian mainland people?
This is within an area in Acre in Brazil. The area of Acre has the most Indigenous concentration within the whole of Brazil, and it's also the concentration of the Amazon jungle. And so a lot of their land was taken over by white people in the 1950s. And around about, from what I know, around about late 60s into the 70s is really when these rubber tappers were kind of forced out of the land. The military got involved, a couple of not-for-profit organizations got involved, and they started to take back the Indigenous land. And that's when, the Yawanawa culture started to come back. There's two main kind of Pagi leaders who have both now passed on, unfortunately. One of them was Yawarani, and the other one was Vovo Tata, Grandfather Tata. And these two grandfathers, elders, they were really the driving force for the culture to come back. They passed on all the knowledge. They brought back the medicines. They brought back the hape, the ayahuasca, the pimenta, the mocha. And
so it
nearly got completely wiped out.
Wow.
Yeah, over the rubber from the trees. And even today, I don't know how knowledgeable people are listening to this conversation, but only about 4 weeks ago was their Indigenous land fully demarcated. So the president of Brazil announced about 4 weeks ago that their land is fully demarcated. It's now in completely Indigenous land, but from all the way from the 50s all the way till now, their land hasn't been their land. People were still able to come into their land, take parcels of land, destroy forests, deforest, take logs. Now that hopefully is not able to take place.
Yeah, okay. And that's, I'm guessing, from a lot of activism and pressure on the politicians.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And a lot of it's, there'll be people listening to this conversation that probably took part in that movement. There's a big movement now to protect the Amazon. There's a big movement for a lot of not-for-profit organizations to protect the Amazon, and we're all able to do it. It's not just Indigenous that have to take care of the forest. It gives us oxygen just as much as it gives them oxygen. If we destroy the Amazon, we don't survive.
Oh yeah, they call it the lungs of the earth.
Right. So, for the Indigenous and for us, it's important to protect that land.
Yeah, and also the wisdom that it carries as well, that the Indigenous carry.
Yeah.
Obviously, we spent time here and passed on wisdom.
Yeah, they have all the plants there. And unfortunately, when we deforest, we take away not just trees, we take away all the medicinal plants. We take away all that knowledge that is carried in the forest. When we go throughout the forest, we don't know plant to plant. For me anyway, when I walk through the forest, they just all look similar.
Yeah.
But these people that have that wisdom, they can point out every single plant, the name of it, what it does. And when we go through and we just wipe out the forest, we wipe out all that knowledge as well and all that medicinal plants.
Now, I'd imagine here, because we don't have much knowledge about the plants around in the UK, I'd imagine there's a lot of with medicinal values that we don't know about.
Yeah.
People actually
I bet if we just went out and looked, there would be a lot of stuff there that we could use.
Yeah, experimented with. Definitely. So yeah, it'd be good to talk a little bit about the festival, because I know you guys are coming over. You're gonna be doing hape ceremonies, live music, and then maybe offering some healing as well.
Yeah, so next year we'll be in your festival, which is awesome, and the Yawanawa will be sharing a little bit about their culture. They'll be sharing their traditional music. They'll be sharing the medicine of hape. So during that medicine of hape, people will get to understand. They'll tell the story of hape more in depth than what I've told it today. They'll spend 30 minutes telling the story, and they'll also be there to perform live, talk a little bit about their culture. Why they're here, why they're sharing their music, because it's only very recently that they've started to really come out the jungle. And the Yawanawa, I think recently, along with other tribes as well, but they're starting to get a lot of attention because I personally believe we're in a transition period within, our earth and our humanity. And people are really starting to want to know about what these tribes are doing. They're wanting to understand what they're doing.
So do you think we're moving to a more spiritually connected time?
I think so, and I hope so. Yeah, I think it would benefit, the whole world if we are connected the way these tribes are connected. I don't think we would have half of the mental health problems that we have. I don't think we would have half of the physical problems that we have.
Yeah, and a lot of war going on the last couple of years, all that as well.
Yeah, and when you're in these cultures, that energetic bubble that surrounds stuff like war and greed and fighting over oil and fighting over whatever it is, land, money, that doesn't exist within these tribes.
Yeah, they must think it's completely insane.
Yeah,
well, most people do, but to them on an even grander level, because they're not out for power and material. I think
no, for them, they're not out for any of that. They don't live for that. They live for the joy of life.
Yeah,
so all that stuff is kind of a little crazy to them.
Yeah,
for sure. It's a little crazy to us, but like you say, it's even more crazy to them.
But yeah, we're super honoured that you're gonna be involved. It's kind of just landed this way.
So are we.
It's meant to be, and really excited. And I think everyone who's coming is really excited to connect with them.
Yeah.
Learn more about the culture. And you guys did Envision before in Costa Rica. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a massive, I don't know what you'd call it, holistic or conscious spiritual festival in Costa Rica. It's one of the biggest in the world.
Yeah, it's a big event now. So we did last year, and this year we'll also be Envision. I think this year is the first week of March, I believe. So we'll be back at Envision this year performing. The boys will be there, doing very similar to what they'll do inside of your festival. They'll perform their music, they'll tell the stories of their culture, they'll pass their medicines out, their hape, and they'll start to explain a little bit about what they're doing here, why they're coming out of the jungle and spreading this message.
Yeah. And you said at the start people weren't really aware who they were or why they were there, and you said by the end they were getting loved.
They got at the start we were kind of the outsiders because everyone was like, who are these Yawanawa? But then after people started to really feel the energy that comes from them through their music, everyone wanted to understand who they were, where they come from, what they're a part of, what they're doing in Costa Rica, why they're here. And so we started to get, more and more people interested in their culture. We got some people come into their village, come in and experience the culture inside of their village. So yeah.
Because they've got their own place, haven't they? Do you want to talk a bit about that and the
Sure.
dates? Because some people might want to go over for it.
Sure. So once a year inside of the village, they open up the village to anyone that would want to come into the village. They call it a vivencia. It's really a translation from festival. It's a week-long event where you get to experience not only their traditional medicines, but you get to experience the culture, all the games that they play. You get to live with them for a week. You eat the food that they eat. You drink the water that they drink. You get to participate in all their ceremonies. You get to experience how they make the medicines. Why do they pass happy? Why do they use happy? What is happy? What do they do to make it? The same with stuff like Sananga, for those that aren't really knowledgeable of Sananga. It's eye drops that you put inside the eye. Why they do Sananga, why they use these baths, why they, cover themselves in paint, why they paint their faces, what plants they use to paint. So yeah, it's kind of a cultural experience for a week where you get to really live with the tribe and really understand what it is they do, why they do this work. And for me, for anyone that really wants to experience it, the village is the place to go.
Yeah.
We get a small taste here in the Western world when they come out and they perform their music, but inside of their home, and you have the whole village there, you really get to experience it.
You're experiencing their day-to-day life and the energy that's built up there. I can only imagine, it's definitely a dream of mine to go out and experience.
And you go up that river on the boat, there's no cars.
How long do you say it takes?
It's about 5 hours.
5 hours on the boat?
Yeah.
So where would you fly into?
So you fly into Rio Branco, or the closest airport to the boat dock is a place called Cruzeiro do Sul. But you can also fly into the main airport, which is Rio Branco. And then you end up meeting at the boat dock.
How far to drive? Yeah.
Rio Branco is about 11 hours. Cruzeiro's about 3.
Yeah.
So for anyone that wants to cut their journey, go to Cruzeiro because it's a lot easier to get there. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's worth it if you. Yeah. It's normally a big journey.
It's good to save 8 hours, definitely.
For sure.
But I suppose the boat is all part of the experience. As you get down the Amazon on the boat, I can imagine it's beautiful.
Yeah, you go on that boat and you go upriver for 5 hours and you don't see anything but forest. There's no cars, there's no buses, there's no bicycles, there's nothing. You're just going up the Amazon River in a small boat, with a motor on the back with someone driving it. And by the time you reach the village, like you say, it's part of the experience. By the time you reach the village, you're really in the heart of the Amazon.
Wow, amazing. Well, we could probably talk for hours. I know I can ask questions, but it's good just to give people a taste. That's what I to do before the festival, give people a taste of the culture. And obviously Greg's lived with them for a long time and he's their translator.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for doing this, Alex. And I'm sure you're all excited to meet the guys. Greg's going to be there as well. So come and say hello, come and get involved in the ceremonies, the music. We're going to be doing talks and just generally be around for people to chat to. So really excited.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And hopefully we'll see some of the people watching the video at the festival.
Yeah, I feel pretty honoured because, by the way, this is Greg's first ever podcast.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. He's telling me all these stories. And I was thinking he must have been pulled on so many documentaries and podcasts. So I said, would you come on? I was like, I've actually never done one before.
First one. And I was pretty nervous to come on, but I'm happy I did it. So
you smashed it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Nice one, guys. Peace out. Big love to everyone watching.
How's your house, as the Yawanawa say.
Yeah, how's your house?